How
So
can
as
you
they are doing that,
how can you assert with certainty that she was trying to hurt the officer as opposed to she was trying to flee the scene?
if you look at what the definition of domestic terrorism is, it completely fits the situation on the ground. This individual, as you saw in the video that we released just 48 hours after this incident, showed that this officer was hit by her vehicle, she weaponized it, and he defended his life and those colleagues around him and the public.
So, an ICE agent killed a woman in Minneapolis on Wednesday morning, and ICE Barbie called her a domestic terrorist 2 hours later, before they'd even finished processing the crime scene, before any investigation, before they could possibly know what actually happened. They call this transparency, which is a fun new way to describe making stuff up and hoping nobody notices. So here's what happened in Minneapolis this week. On Wednesday morning, ICE agents were conducting what they call an enforcement action, a euphemism we'll come back to when they shot and killed a woman named Renee Good. 2 hours later, DHS put out a statement definitively saying she was a domestic terrorist who attacked officers with her vehicle. Secretary Kristi Noem repeated this claim at a press conference 30 minutes after that. Jake Tapper interviewed Noem on CNN's State of the Union, and what follows is one of the most revealing exchanges you'll see about how this administration operates. As usual, let's watch what happened, and I will give you my take later.
You've also been criticized for your comments. The shooting, we should note, was Wednesday at 10:37 a.m. Eastern. Just over 2 hours later, the Department of Homeland Security put out a statement definitively asserting what had happened, defending the ICE agent, accusing Renee Good of domestic terrorism. That's a characterization that you reiterated in a press conference half an hour later. Now, Republican Senator Thom Tillis said, quote, "It was very unusual to have a senior law enforcement official to draw a conclusion about an event where the scene was still being processed. Generally speaking, law enforcement would recognize that a life was lost, that families are changed forever, the shooter's life will change forever. We're collecting video, we're trying to assess the situation." Why did you not wait for an investigation before making your comments?
Well, everything that I've said has been proven to be factual and the truth. This administration wants to operate in transparency. I have the responsibility as the Secretary of Homeland Security to know this information as soon as possible. Had just been in Minneapolis the day before, had already had conversations with officers on the ground and supervisors, and knew the facts, and decided that the department and the people of this country deserve to know the truth of the situation of what had unfolded in Minneapolis.
But with all due respect, Secretary, the first thing you said was, quote, "What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow."
Correct.
Because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and rammed them with her vehicle. That's not what happened. We all saw what happened.
It absolutely is what happened. Those officers had been out in enforcement action. A vehicle had been stuck. They had come to help get that vehicle out. That's when this individual started blocking traffic for minutes and minutes.
You said that the woman attacked them and surrounded them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle.
Blocked the road for a long time and was yelling at them and impeding a federal law enforcement investigation. And that's what you need to focus on, Jake, is they were breaking the law by impeding and obstructing a law enforcement operation. They were breaking the law already, and these officers were doing their due diligence and what their training had prepared them to do to make sure they were handling it appropriately.
You said within hours of her being killed, you said that she was a domestic terrorist. How do you define domestic terrorist?
She weaponized her vehicle to conduct an act of violence against a law enforcement officer and the public. As they are doing that,
how can you assert with certainty that she was trying to hurt the officer as opposed to she was trying to flee the scene?
if you look at what the definition of domestic terrorism is, it completely fits the situation on the ground. This individual, as you saw in the video that we released just 48 hours after this incident, showed that this officer was hit by her vehicle, she weaponized it, and he defended his life and those colleagues around him and the public.
The question is, I don't doubt, my position is, I wasn't there, I didn't see it. Some people say that it clearly showed that she was trying to hit him and did. Some people say, no, she was clearly trying to move her car and flee and get away. I don't know. What I'm saying is, how do you know? How can you assert for a fact within hours, before any investigation, this is what happened?
The facts of the situation are that the vehicle was weaponized and it attacked the law enforcement officer. He defended himself and he defended those individuals around him. That is the definition. When there is something that is weaponized to use against the public and law enforcement, that is an act of domestic terrorism. It happened in our shores. It happened here in our country. You don't get to change the facts just because you don't like them. We will continue to look at this individual and what her motivations were. We know that there was, throughout that morning, she had harassed and impeded law enforcement operations. That raises the suspicion level with all of these law enforcement officers as far as paying attention to what her capacity is. And as you see on the videos, and they've proven out, that this law enforcement officer took the action that his training prepared him for, and he worked to make sure that he could save his own life and those around him.
How can you assert that there's no ambiguity in this before any investigation has taken place?
I had just been in Minneapolis and had been with those officers, had seen what they were facing on the streets every day, and had talked to their supervisors as soon as the incident happened and had gotten the facts and seen videos before I ever went to talk at that press conference. And the Trump administration and President Trump is the most transparent and open government that we've ever had. Give the public the information, give them what they need to know about a situation so they can have the truth as soon as possible.
So if this agents were perfectly fine, if everything he did was accurate, does that mean that other ICE agents should
He
look
wasn't
at what...
perfectly fine. He was injured. He went to the hospital.
No,
He
his
was
actions
treated.
were fine. I didn't say...
In fact, I think a lot of people and guests, and even you yourself, called this situation something very different and untruthful about what it was, as far as...
What did I say that was untruthful?
That this was not a correct definition of what was happening on the ground. That this
I said that your description, they were attempting to push out their vehicle and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle, is not what we see on the videotape, and it's not.
It absolutely is the facts of what happened on the ground that day. They were there pushing out a vehicle earlier. They had helped each other.
But that's not
do
what
that.
you said. That's not what you said.
Yes,
they were pushing out a vehicle.
Absolutely what I said. There's not one.
We all have seen the video. I don't need to relitigate it. We've all seen the video. She is blocking the street. They approach her.
You haven't seen the video of the entire morning and the previous encounters with this individual.
Oh, we have aired it. Yes, we have. On Thursday, we were airing and noting the fact that she was there for several minutes, for minutes and minutes and minutes. She was protesting without question.
And at previous locations that morning, that these vehicles had been previously down the block on video that you haven't seen. There's more information that this individual was impeding law enforcement operations throughout the previous moments and hours before this incident
The question is, what was she doing when she was moving her car?
The question
That's the question.
Is why are we arguing with a president who's working to keep people safe? Why are we arguing with law enforcement operations that have gone on in this country for years, and we're working to collect murderers and rapists and drug traffickers and fraudsters off the streets of Minnesota, and we don't have local law enforcement and local elected officials that are partnering with us to help do that work? Overwhelmingly, the people in this country said they wanted America to be safe again, that they didn't want dangerous criminals on our streets. I would encourage the elected leaders in that city and in that state to work with us so that we can do our operations without the kind of opposition and people that are conducting and perpetuating the kind of violent rhetoric that we're seeing today.
If you're watching this thinking, wait, did she just refuse to answer the same question 8 different ways? You're absolutely right. And here's what you need to know that makes this even worse. First, let's talk about what domestic terrorism actually means. It's not just anytime someone does something bad to a law enforcement officer. There are specific requirements about political motivation, intent to intimidate or coerce, and it's a designation that carries enormous legal and social weight. Noem keeps saying the woman weaponized her vehicle, which sounds very dramatic until you realize she's describing a car moving, which is what cars do. But here's the thing Jake Tapper is trying to get at that Noem keeps dodging. How do you know with absolute certainty 2 hours after the fact that this woman was trying to attack officers rather than trying to get away from them? Even if you accept that her car made contact with an officer, which the video apparently shows, though the circumstances are disputed, there's a massive difference between I'm trying to hurt you and I'm trying to get out of here and you're in the way. That difference matters. It's literally the difference between murder and manslaughter in many jurisdictions, the difference between justified use of force and a potential crime. And notice what Noem does when pressed. She pivots to impeding a federal law enforcement operation as if protesting is now equivalent to terrorism. She keeps saying they were breaking the law already, referring to blocking the street, but blocking a street is a misdemeanor. You don't get shot for misdemeanors. And you definitely don't get posthumously labeled a terrorist for them. Here's what Noem is actually doing. She's establishing that if you interfere with ICE operations in any way, even peacefully, even legally, they can shoot you and call you a terrorist, and they'll have justified it before your body is cold. That's not law enforcement. That's intimidation. And the message is clear. Don't protest ICE. Don't film ICE. Don't get in ICE's way. Or you might be next, and they'll make sure everyone thinks you deserved it. When Jake Tapper points out that even Republican Senator Thom Tillis said this was very unusual, Noem's response is essentially, well, I talked to the supervisors, so I know. Think about that. The supervisors, whose officer just shot someone, told her their guy was in the right, and she took that at face value within hours and announced it to the world. That's not an investigation. That's a rubber stamp. And then there's the tell, the moment that reveals what this is really about. When Tapper keeps pressing on the facts, Noem says, why are we arguing with a president who is working to keep people safe? There it is. This isn't about what happened in Minneapolis. It's about defending Trump's immigration agenda at all costs, even if it means calling a dead woman a terrorist before anyone knows what actually happened. The facts don't matter. The truth doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the narrative. ICE good, protesters bad. Anyone who questions us is helping criminals. Here's the language you need when someone brings this up. A woman is dead, and instead of waiting for an investigation, they called her a terrorist 2 hours later. That's not transparency. That's propaganda. And if they'll do it to her, they'll do it to anyone who gets in their way. So what does this actually mean for you? It means if you're someone who cares about immigration policy in any direction, you no longer have any assurance that what your government tells you about ICE operations is true. They're not waiting for facts. They're not conducting investigations. They're writing the story in real time to justify whatever happened, and by the time the truth comes out, the lie has already traveled around the world. It's like getting a text from your roommate saying, I didn't break your TV before you even knew your TV was broken. You immediately know your TV is definitely broken, and they definitely broke it. But it's bigger than that. This is about whether we're a country where law enforcement agencies wait for investigations before declaring guilt, or whether we're a country where they shoot first and write the press release second. Every police department in America, no matter how troubled, knows you don't call someone a criminal before you've investigated. You say an incident occurred, it's under investigation, we'll share information as we learn it. That's not political correctness. That's basic due process. It's what separates us from authoritarian regimes. And think about what this means internationally. America lectures other countries about rule of law, about not labeling people terrorists without evidence, about waiting for investigations. And now our DHS secretary goes on national television and essentially says, we know what happened because the officers who shot her told us, and that's good enough. Do you think that plays well in countries we're trying to convince to respect human rights? And for what? Because they were worried about looking bad? Because they wanted to get ahead of the story? Because in this administration, admitting you don't know something yet is seen as weakness? A woman is dead, and they decided that managing the news cycle was more important than getting it right. Here's what this isn't about. It's not about whether ICE agents should be allowed to defend themselves. Of course they should. It's not about whether blocking streets is illegal. Of course it is. Here's what this is about. Can your government kill you and call you a terrorist before anyone's had a chance to figure out what actually happened? Because based on what we just watched, the answer is yes. They can, and they will, and they'll do it while calling it transparency and keeping people safe. And if you ask questions like Jake Tapper did, like Senator Thom Tillis did, like anyone with a functioning brain would do, they'll accuse you of defending criminals and opposing public safety. A woman is dead, and they wrote her eulogy in 2 hours. Not to honor her, to justify her death. And they're not sorry about it. They're proud of it. At least when I confidently declared things too early, I had the decency to feel embarrassed when I was wrong. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.